Excellent. So, oh, looks like you're getting a picture taken. So you've already kind of experienced the benefits that you have for your customers, the different types of jewelry you've been able to make with CAD. Do you do any restorations at all, or any type of period pieces?
Not yet.
Not yet, but you will. Has anybody had a customer who dropped a ring into a garbage disposal? Right? Many times. Why is that? I don't know, but it happens. So, and I'll actually use this ring up on the board behind us. That was one that went into a garbage disposal, and the only thing left was really one of those plates in the front that had that detail. The rest of the ring, my excellent shop kind of formed it back so that I was able to get enough dimensions off of it and recreate it using CAD. I'm going to pull up the model so you can see what that looks like in CAD. This is not it.
Come close, listen.
Thanks for bearing with me. Here it is. So you can see on the screen, we made it nice and big. One important aspect of vintage jewelry is that it has a light, airy feeling, and it's not clunky, and it doesn't have that heavy feeling of a lot of the designs that we see today. And that's the charm of vintage pieces. So you can, I'm just going to go inside so you can see. Each one of those little squares that you're seeing in the back is 1 millimeter. The heavier square is 5 millimeters. So this will give you a sense of size. And I think Laura is actually passing the ring around right now so you can see what that looks like. That's the finished piece. I even put in the mill grain details, but a lot of those sometimes we'll just let our shop do and have that kind of feeling of the hand tooling, and it really brings it home. Now this one isn't done, I don't have the beads and the sides, but I really just wanted you to see how delicate the plates were in here. Hagop, you can probably tell us a little bit about how you finished this off.
Imagine trying to pierce this with a saw blade. It would be like impossible, right? You're a jeweler, you've been a jeweler for a long time. You try to pierce that out. I mean, look at, nothing is impossible, right? We're human beings, we can put our minds to doing anything. It's just a lot harder, yeah. When we were done with this crown, it was pristine. It was as pristine as you see it, but when you print it, sometimes you get a little bit of excess residue here and there. And I actually went under a microscope with a broken saw blade and just kind of cleaned all those areas up. But one of the main reasons why I did it is because I wanted to get some saw blade effects on the interior of those filigree areas in order for the end results to look like it was handmade in the shop, like it was 100 or so years ago. So.
Maybe you could explain that. Now this ring was originally back in 1920. It was probably a die-cast ring, right?
Die-struck, absolutely.
Die-struck. Yeah. And today it was cast as one piece. So really the only difference you could see was from the inside. With a die-struck ring, this would all be smooth. And with our ring, you actually see some casting grains. We could have gone in and cleaned it, I suppose. But the whole idea is that you're starting with sort of a block, and then you're using your jewelers to make it look as if it was made a long time ago. Who would know that that ring is made today? So I have another example, actually, if you guys even want to one at a time come up to the case and take a look at it. It's a sterling silver lapis piece. That was a shoe buckle or a lapel pin, who knows? My customers don't wear shoe buckles any longer. I don't know, it's just not in vogue, but they do like earrings. So what we decided to do was to take the same elements that we have on there and create a dangle style earring. So I actually took a photograph of the buckle element You can see that on my Instagram page. And I imported that into my software and was able to take some of those little elements and recreate them to create a top piece. So I still have my 3 little beads, which is my signature design, and then I've recreated the leaves and the vines. This is all a work in progress, so it's not quite finished yet. I hope the customer doesn't see any of this, but the stone is going to be a lapis, and we're going to have some vintage chain that's connecting the 2 pieces together. So I have the wax on there, and you can see the detail that the wax created, and then I oxidized it and did some hand rubbing to it, and everything that a vintage piece would want. So when you have the 2 pieces together, there's really, you can't tell that the original designer didn't make the top piece. Every little detail is accounted for, even down to the patina. So another example I have here is this clasp. And I'm bringing this up because when we were just discussing having some hand details in it, this is one that I actually allowed my jewelers in the shop to go with. So I'm giving them sort of a blank slate and having them finish it off. And I'm going to show you the project first. Give me a minute. There we go. So it was an antique watch barb from Cartier's, and you can see it has some pearls up there, all platinum, beautiful Art Deco design. She wanted to wear this as a necklace, and there was no way we were going to call Cartier's and have them create a clasp for us. So here we have the clasp, and I've taken all the details from the elements and I've recreated them on top. Now, when this was complete, there was really no difference. I mean, a jeweler would never question whether this was done now or whether it was done by Cartier. It was impeccable.
We actually use vintage diamonds in areas that were pavé set. We hand cut the base frame in order to allow the clasp to enter and exit. We actually, as well as handmade the clasp itself, the plunger clasp mechanism, so that when it was complete, it looked like it was done in a period rather than something that was added on 100 years later. Yeah, so, and the reason why Alex provided the shop with just flat surfaces was to allow us to do the hand tooling and the bright cutting and again, to make it look like it was done in that period.
So you see, it just looks like a box where this allows my jeweler to cut in where he's going to cut in, and he actually handmade the plunger to go inside. So plunger, if everybody's ever looked at a vintage plunger or clasp, there's saw blade marks all over it. It's just a part. They don't see it as really a part of the design. So it was important for me to have the plunger portion handmade. I'm a sole believer that you still need a good jeweler in your shop or that you're working with, because something as delicate as preserving vintage pieces or adding elements to it is pretty important, and you want to be as spot on as possible. So let's go on to the next one. This one here, I actually have this in the showcase. This is a ring that was pretty popular back in 1940s, and maybe some of you remember this design. I believe it was Blossom. No longer available. Company is no longer creating these, but as vintage jewelry is very popular today, we've recreated it. Now the one that Laura's passing around right now has a little yellow diamond and a little white diamond in with the flowers, kind of a sweet detail to it that I don't think they did originally, but both of these are actually on my blog if you want to see the details to it.
That's Alexandria.com.
Now stop. So.
Just kidding, folks.
All right. So, oh, I pulled up the wrong one, but we'll talk about this one first, since this is kind of a segue into what we're talking about later this afternoon, which is 3 parts or multiple parts. So this is another example of some vintage stylings of a ring I created, and you can see some sloppy lines around here. I'll just get rid of them. Where I've really only given my jewelers guidelines. There's only airlines and guidelines to where I want them to complete. And if you see in the case, and Laura, you don't have to pull them all out, but whenever you want to look at them, there's hand engraving on the shanks, there's the actual mill grain, and the actual pave setting. On here, I really only included the holes, so my jewelers can pave set where they need to. And we'll talk about this a little bit on the next example, but this ring was an 18 karat piece on the top, and the bottom was in platinum with a yellow diamond. So that's just that example. All right, so this is the one I wanted to pull up initially, and this kind of nods to vintage stylings and how to kind of keep that real fine details. If you see on here, again, I've just only given my jewelers guidelines. This was all hand engraved, all of the sides. I did include very thin filigree on the sides, but you'll see these pieces here are separate. A lot of times with vintage pieces, they had these airlines, and that was sort of their play on negative and positive space, and it always kind of elevated the design. So the way for us to keep those nice clean lines is to just blow them out separate. So we have the piece over here, and you see I have like a little box around it with some tabs. That's grown like that, and then it's actually cast like that. We finish it, polish it, set the stone, keeping it in that frame, and right before we set it into its final resting place, we snip it off, and it clicks in with these little tabs. So you don't have any bending, twisting. There really isn't any question of where that piece goes, but this also gives you that hand frame, or it's something to actually hold on to. And you can create that in CAD in any piece. This is just an example of how it works brilliant with vintage pieces.
We'll do this a lot with multiple parts that are involved in making a piece of jewelry. We create a frame for it so that we can actually hold it by that frame and not necessarily handle the actual component that's going to be going into the actual design. And so Alex makes it very easy for us to be able to do these things in the shop as a designer and as a creative designer, I should say.
Well, I think creativity is also thinking about how to keep your design the way that you intended. And here's another example of that in the purple, and I'll just turn off the green, and I'll turn off this. Well, I can leave that one there. So this kind of bar on the bottom, it's kind of like a smiley shape. That's also used as my sprue to add onto. But I also have these little support bars in here as well. Now, if you looked at this in metal, and you're going to be setting some stones in here and doing some hand engraving, really the only support bar you have is right here while it's loose. And that's going to bend, it's going to twist, it'll probably break off. So I have these little bars on either side that click right up underneath. You can see that on the other side as a support bar. And that's going to allow you to do everything that you need to do. This one here is going to make sure that it doesn't bend and twist and it stays in the shape that I want it to be, because by the time you put all of these parts together, it's pretty important that these stay together. And you can see this is actually a ring that I have in the showcase, and I'm not sure if Laura's walking around with that one, but again, we've recreated that really thin airline in there, and then I've had my jewelers add my signature 3 dots that goes in there. So they've done that by hand, so it looks, again, like a vintage piece. I've also allowed them to do all the mill grain on there too. So I'm pretty sure you've seen pieces out there that have mill grain. There's the larger beads that you'll see like in advertisements, and then you see actual mill grain. I'm old school. I love old mill grain, but a lot of my customers will ask for the deeper, larger beads and yeah, more pronounced beads. And so I'll also do that in CAD. But again, CAD will offer, within the program, you can, I think they have a mill grain builder. Again, I'm old school. I put it one bead at a time. Sometimes it just doesn't come out the way you want it, so you want to have them control over everything, and CAD allows you to do that. You have control over everything. The examples I'm showing you is actually the CAD designer having control over all of the manufacturing right to the very end. And I think with vintage jewelry, it's critical. You've got to be able to design for what's going to be happening. So we kind of went over the preservation and restoration of jewelry similar to the one up on the board there. Outdated style conversions, so taking vintage styles and recreating them, giving them more of a modern function rather than a shoe buckle. And then recreating the past, you know, die struck versus cast. I'm not going to say one is better than the other, but today we can cast pieces that are thin and light and delicate, and that really do have that that feeling of vintage. So I'm just gonna, I know Hagop wants to talk a little bit about the shop.
All I wanted to say was like the reason why they actually came into striking metals was because they didn't have the technology to be able to cast really light, delicate. Today we have vacuum. I'm not a big caster, but the technology has improved tremendously. Is where I'm going with that.
Yeah, the level of detail that we can get today versus, you know, back in the day is amazing. So, and then design it better. So, I think this was probably the first time I've ever mentioned this point, but anytime that I'm recreating a vintage piece, I look at why it broke in the first place. What would better this design without changing it completely? Women today want to wear a straight wedding band up against their engagement ring. Most do. So is there any way to modify that design without changing it completely so that she can? Whether it's lifting up the gallery or kind of tapering that gallery bottom in a little bit. And the other thing that we do today that I don't think they took into consideration was build it to last. Build that shank, rather than being 1.3 millimeters, start at 2. So that she will be able to wear it while she's working and doing everything that the modern woman does today when they wear their engagement ring. Anybody have any questions?
Any questions or requests?
That was vintage. Now, you're considering adding CAD into your shop for different reasons. Had you thought about ever taking in, or do you take in restorations right now?
Yes.
Okay. So can you see how CAD would help you at this point?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So that makes it stronger. I mean, like you said, just the way it was built before. I mean, it's not that it was done wrong.
Right.
It's just done to their ability that they could do it.
To the
What technology
technology
had to
they
offer.
had. Exactly,
Yeah.
to the technology they had. Now, we're able to offer, because we do restorations on pieces that are existing, and we can also recreate the piece for them, we're able to offer them 2 quotes. They'll come in, and if it can be restored, that's fantastic. I mean, if it needs minimal prong buildup and maybe just a shank that's a little bit heavier, we definitely have the shop that is capable of that, and we're not going to try to sell them a brand new ring. But if the undergallery is worn, if she put it through the garbage disposal, if she wants to wear it every day and it just isn't strong enough, we're able to offer them 2 quotes. One, to restore your ring to the point where you'll be able to wear it every single day, or we can recreate this ring for you. So being able to offer those 2 things is, I mean, it's critical to someone who just inherited great grandma's ring, and she really desperately wants to wear it. So, and Hagop does all the restoration, so he can tell you the benefits.
Yeah, well, technology is really what it comes back to, is what we're able to do today versus, I guess it's no different than the way they, what's an old fine diamond or a European cut diamond versus a modern round brilliant diamond. There's a reason for that, right? It has to do with what technology had to offer for these diamond cutters and their ability to be able to cut and cast the diamonds, for example. So it's no different than the tools that we have today, technology. It allows us to be able to do things that we could never even. Actually, it allows us to do things that we only dreamt of at one time. So it's a good way to describe that.
Yeah, definitely true. Yeah, and I think it really makes, from a design perspective, I always loved vintage jewelry, and so being able to kind of recreate those same elements, but in a modern design, it's inspiring. It's being able to say, oh, you know what, I feel like making a vintage ring today. I'll go through like some catalogs and get some inspiration, and then once it's all formulated in my head, like you, I'll either sketch it out where I have a problem sketching the whole ring out. Maybe I'll just do half a ring, and I can either import it or I can just start building it out of CAD. But again, there's also resources where you can send your sketch to a technician who will actually start creating that ring for you and modify it as you need to. So don't feel like it's all on your shoulders. Doing vintage jewelry within CAD is a whole nother level. It's not like making plain wedding bands, So, but you get there because of the passion for it and for loving vintage jewelry like I do. So,
if I may say, it also, and I know we talked a little bit about this earlier, is being able to work with customers that are in your shop for a custom design, and they have questions as to what is it going to look like if we do it this way versus this way or that way. If you pull up that Trino with the we'll show you a design that we do at our store. We actually did really well with this model. It's one of our best sellers last bridal season. We're able to show, as a matter of fact, a lot of the items that you saw today that Alex designed all have a vintage or an antique feel to them. We do a lot of that in Boston. People, Bostonians are very conservative clients, so they're not. But anyway, these three rings here are the exact same ring. And the difference is the center crown. One has a modern feel, the other has a vintage feel, and the last has a classic feel. And you're able to do this for your clients and say, which one do you like?
And you can see how I did the, how we were talking about earlier, like everyone wants to wear a straight wedding band up against their engagement ring. So I'm just going to pull them to the side like this, and we'll use the center one. But the way that I've tapered this down, the wedding band actually matches up with that piece right there. There's really no guesswork when you're doing it with CAD. It just works. You can see on this model right here, it actually goes under the crown, so you have that bridge work. And then this one right here, it actually bypasses those prongs. So this one, it rests up against here. This one, it doesn't touch, and this one rests up against that one there. So, but someone asked me earlier, well, how long did it take for you to make this ring? So I made one shank. It probably took me realistically about 3 hours, maybe 4 hours. But then over time, I created these crowns as needed. So the first one, I believe, was the kind of this vintage looking one. And then someone said, I really like that band, but I want it in a bezel. So we ended up doing a bezel that had this little element on the side. And then as we were selling more and more, we did the classic version. But being able to show this to your client in platinum, yellow gold, rose gold, you want prongs, you want a bezel, it's sort of invaluable sales tool, as well as a fantastic online marketing tool. So you're able to show the same ring in every different variation. People just love that. I ham it up.
These are all renderings. They're not real photos.
No, they're real photos.
They're real photos of renderings, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I meant to say. Where I'm getting with that is that CAD is going to allow you to be able to create this amazing portfolio of realistic looking items that you'll be able to use over and over again. We've developed our entire website, we populated our website using all of Alexandria's designs and renderings. And to be able to show them in different colors, choice of metals, sizes of gemstones, color of gemstones. So it's a pretty impressive technology to be able to utilize in that way. Any questions? Any requests? We had people here last time that wanted her to make a piece of jewelry while they watched.
I'm not
And she did it.
Anyway,
well, thank you all very much for your time, and
you can definitely come up and ask me questions. I'm just going to turn the mic off, but feel free to come up and we can talk about any of these vintage pieces. We can also talk about working CAD into your business.